Commander Vexel stood in front of a huge screen on his spaceship. He watched the blue and green planet spin slowly below them. For 3 months, his spy ships had been watching the third planet from this yellow star. What they found made him very happy. "Tell me what you see," he said to his helper. Officer Zillaneth moved her long arms over the control buttons. "The main creatures on this planet are very calm, Commander. They spend most of their time sitting in small rooms looking at bright squares. They eat processed food and do very little moving around." Vexahal made a clicking sound with his mouthparts. He was amused. "Show me their army bases." The screen changed to show different human towns and cities. Zillaneth pointed to several places. "These look like their main fighting places, Commander. See how few there are and how weak they look. Most of their big cities have no walls or guards at all." On the screen, they could see neighborhoods spreading out across the land. Humans walked small four-legged animals on thin ropes. They took care of plants around their houses. They moved around in wheeled machines at slow speeds. "Very interesting," Vexel said. "They have become soft because life is too easy for them. Look at them, Zillaneth. They have forgotten how to fight." In the human city of Denver, Colorado, Jake Morrison was having what he thought was a normal Tuesday morning. The man who worked with numbers sat in his kitchen drinking coffee. His wife, Lisa, made lunch for their 2 children. The local news played in the background, talking about traffic and weather. "Honey, don't forget Kevin has soccer practice tonight," Lisa said, brushing her blonde hair away from her face. Jake nodded without really listening. He looked at emails on his tablet. "I got it. I should be home by 6. 3 states away in Phoenix, Arizona, Danny Rodriguez was a construction worker taking his lunch break. He sat in the shade of a half-built office building. He unwrapped a sandwich while joking with his work friends about the weekend fishing trip they planned. "You bring the beer. I'll bring the fishing gear," his friend Carlos called out. "Deal," Danny laughed. He had no idea that alien machines were watching him and deciding he was not dangerous dot in the suburbs of Atlanta, Georgia. Nurse Betty Williams worked in her garden. She carefully watered her tomato plants while her neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, talked over the fence about their grandchildren. This peaceful scene made the alien watchers believe that humans were no threat at all. Back on the alien spaceship, Vexal made his choice. "Get the attack ships ready," he ordered. "This will be the easiest fight in our empire's history. A simple show of power should make them give up right away." Officer Zillaneth was not sure. "Commander, shouldn't we watch them longer? Our computer files show that creatures who can travel between planets often have hidden strengths." Vexahul made a harsh laughing sound. "Look at them, Zillaneth. They can barely lift themselves from their resting positions. They move slowly, they are out of shape, and they show no signs of knowing how to fight. We will control this planet in 1 day." The huge alien fleet began to move. Hundreds of ships started going down toward Earth's air. In their pride, they had made the same mistake that many hunters throughout Earth's history had made when they met humans in their natural state. They thought that rest meant weakness, but they were wrong about something very important. The humans they watched were not weak. They were apex predators, the most dangerous hunters on their planet. And right now, they were just resting. Jake Morrison seemed like a simple man who worked with numbers. But he had skills hidden inside him. Skills that came from millions of years of human survival. Skills that every human carried in their blood. And Bones. Danny Rodriguez looked like just another construction worker. But he knew how to build things and break things. He understood tools and machines. He could solve problems quickly. These were the same skills that had helped humans survive ice ages and fight off huge, dangerous animals. Betty Williams appeared to be a gentle grandmother, but she had been a soldier once. She had treated wounded people in war zones. She knew how to stay calm when everything went wrong. She knew how to help people work together when their lives were in danger. All across Earth, millions of people like Jake, Danny, and Betty went about their normal lives. They worked in offices, built buildings, taught children, and grew food. They seemed peaceful and harmless, but the aliens watching them did not understand what they were really seeing. They were looking at the most successful species of hunters in Earth's history. Humans had fought and defeated every dangerous creature on their planet. They had survived disasters that killed most other animals. They had learned to live in every type of environment on Earth. The aliens saw humans sitting quietly and thought they were weak. They saw humans being kind to each other and thought they were soft. They saw humans living peaceful lives and thought they could not fight. This was their first big mistake. Humans had not become weak. They had become so good at surviving that they could afford to be peaceful. They had become so skilled at fighting that they rarely needed to fight anymore. They had become so dangerous that other creatures learned to stay away from them. But when something threatened their families, their homes, or their way of life, humans could change very quickly. The peaceful office worker could become a fighter. The gentle teacher could become a leader. The quiet neighbor could become a warrior. The aliens thought they were attacking sheep. They were actually attacking wolves who had chosen to act like sheep. And they were about to learn the difference. As the alien ships moved closer to Earth, 8 billion human beings continued their normal daily activities. They drank coffee, went to work, took care of their children, and watched television. They had no idea that danger was coming, but deep inside each of them, something ancient and powerful was waiting. Something that had helped their ancestors survive for thousands of years. Something that had made humans the rulers of their world. The aliens were about to wake up the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and they had no idea what was coming. The first alien ships broke through Earth's atmosphere at 3:47 in the morning Eastern Time. Their hulls shined like silver teardrops against the morning sky. Within minutes, every major city on the planet was looking up at the impossible sight of alien ships floating above their buildings. In Denver, Jake Morrison was pouring his second cup of coffee when every electronic device in his house started screaming emergency warnings. The sound woke him up completely. He turned to see Lisa standing frozen in front of the television. Her face was very pale. "Jake," she whispered, "look." The news reporter had lost her calm professional look. Behind her, through the studio window, massive alien ships hung in the air above the city like storm clouds made of metal. "This is not a drill," the reporter was saying. Her voice was shaking. "We are getting reports of similar craft appearing over major cities worldwide. The president will make a statement within the hour. For now, all citizens should stay in their homes and wait for more instructions." Jake felt something cold in his stomach. His children, Emma and Tony, appeared in the doorway. They were still in their pajamas. Their eyes were wide with fear and confusion. "Dad, what's happening?" Emma asked. Her voice was very small. Before Jake could answer, the house shook. Outside, a sound like thunder rolled across the neighborhood. But it didn't fade away. It grew louder and more demanding until the windows began to shake. 3 miles above them, Commander Vexhall was starting the first part of his conquest. "Begin the demonstration," he ordered. Alien ships moved into position over major landmarks in each city. In New York, they hovered above the Statue of Liberty. In Los Angeles, they made shadows over Hollywood. In Denver, one ship moved directly above the downtown area. Energy beams shot down from the ships, not to destroy, but to disable. Power systems flickered and died. Communication networks went silent. Transportation systems stopped working. The aliens wanted to show their power without causing unnecessary damage to what would soon be their new territory. But they had misunderstood something basic about humans. In Phoenix, Danny Rodriguez was no longer the relaxed construction worker taking a lunch break. When the first ship appeared over his job site, something ancient and basic had awakened in his mind. His body language changed instantly. His muscles tensed. His eyes looked for threats and escape routes. Everyone off the high floors, now. He shouted to his crew, "If those things start shooting, we don't want to be outlined against the sky." His co-workers were frozen by shock at first. Then they responded to the authority in his voice. Without question, they began moving toward the stairwells. Danny's mind was already thinking 3 steps ahead. He was cataloging potential weapons, defensive positions, and resources. In Atlanta, Betty Williams had dropped her watering can the moment the alien ships appeared. The gentle grandmother was accessing memories she thought she had left behind. Decades ago, she had served as a combat medic in Kosovo. Her hands moved automatically to check for her medical kit. Her eyes looked at sight lines and cover positions in her own backyard. "George," she called to her husband. Her voice carried a tone he hadn't heard in 20 years. "Get the emergency supplies from the basement. All of them." Her husband was a retired police sergeant. He recognized that tone immediately. Without argument, he headed for the basement. His own training was coming back to him. The aliens had expected panic, chaos, and quick surrender. Instead, they saw something they didn't understand. The humans weren't running in random directions. They were moving with purpose. They were gathering resources, establishing communication networks, and forming defensive positions. In living rooms across America, men and women who had been watching morning television 5 minutes earlier were now checking emergency supplies, contacting family members, and making tactical assessments of their neighborhoods. The accountants, teachers, shop clerks, and retirees were changing before the aliens' eyes. Back in Denver, Jake Morrison was experiencing his own change. The coffee cup was forgotten as he moved through his house with military precision. He secured entry points and gathered supplies. Lisa watched in amazement as her mild-mannered husband became someone she barely recognized. "Jake, what are you doing?" "Emergency protocols," he replied curtly, checking the locks on their doors. "Lisa, I need you to take the kids to the basement. Fill every container we have with water. Stay away from windows." "Emergency protocols? Jake, you're an accountant." He paused and looked at her. She saw something in his eyes that made her take a step back. "I'm also a human being," he said quietly. "And someone just threatened my family." Above them, Commander Vexhol was growing puzzled. The humans' behavior wasn't matching his predictions. Instead of cowering in terror, they appeared to be organizing. "Officer Zillaneth, what are your sensors detecting?" Zillaneth's long arms moved rapidly over her instruments. "Commander, I'm reading increased movement throughout the population centers. They appear to be regrouping." "Regrouping?" Vexhol's mouthparts clicked with irritation. "They're primitives. What could they possibly be regrouping for?" He was about to find out. All across America, something was happening that the aliens had never seen before. Ordinary people were remembering that they were not ordinary at all. They were members of the most successful predator species that had ever lived on Earth. The accountant remembered that his grandfather had fought in World War II. The teacher remembered that her father had been a police officer. The shop clerk remembered that she had grown up on a farm where every day was a struggle for survival. But more than memories, they were accessing something deeper, something written in their DNA by millions of years of evolution. The knowledge of how to survive when everything went wrong. The instinct to protect their families and their territory. The ability to work together when faced with a common threat. In millions of homes across the planet, humans were doing what they had always done when danger threatened. They were adapting, They were preparing. They were getting ready to fight. The aliens watching from above saw this activity and made their second big mistake. They thought the humans were panicking. They thought the increased movement meant chaos and confusion. They didn't realize they were watching 8 billion apex predators getting ready for war. In New York City, former Marine Rick Barnes was no longer thinking about his job selling insurance. He was thinking about fields of fire, defensive positions, and supply lines. In his apartment, he was checking equipment he hadn't touched in years. In Chicago, elementary school teacher Amy Chun was no longer thinking about lesson plans. She was thinking about coordination, communication, and logistics. She was making lists of resources and personnel. In Los Angeles, stuntman Carlos Gutierrez was no longer thinking about his next movie job. He was thinking about explosives, booby traps, and urban warfare. All across the world, humans were changing. Not into something they had never been, but back into what they had always been underneath their civilized exterior. They were remembering that they were the species that had looked at every dangerous environment on Earth and decided to live there anyway. They were the species that had turned every challenge into an opportunity. They were the species that never gave up, never backed down, and never stopped fighting when their survival was at stake. That the aliens had made the mistake of thinking that civilization made humans weak. They were about to learn that civilization just made humans more dangerous, because now they had science, technology, and 8 billion minds working together. The storm was about to break, and the aliens had no idea what they had unleashed. The first alien ground forces landed in Central Park at 8 o'clock in the morning. Commander Vexall had chosen New York City for the first occupation. He thought that capturing the humans' biggest city would make the rest of the planet give up quickly. Landing craft touched down on the Great Lawn, their ramps lowered to show alien soldiers. Each soldier stood nearly 8 feet tall. Their armor shined with built-in weapons. They moved in perfect formation, expecting to face panicked civilians running in terror. Instead, they found the park eerily quiet, hidden in the trees. Former Marine Sergeant Rick Barnes lay flat behind a park bench. He watched the alien deployment through binoculars he had taken from his apartment 3 blocks away. Beside him, retired Army medic Carol Santos was studying the aliens' equipment and movement patterns. "I count 12 in the first wave," Rick whispered into a handheld radio. "Heavy armor, energy weapons. They're spreading out in a standard search pattern." The radio crackled with responses from across the city. In the 45 minutes since the power grid had failed, New York's 8 million people had done something the aliens hadn't expected. They had organized. Every military veteran, every police officer, every security guard, every hunter, every person who had ever received tactical training had stepped forward. But more importantly, millions of ordinary citizens had remembered something crucial about their species. Humans were not prey animals. In a downtown office building, software engineer Maria Lopez was no longer thinking about computer code and databases. She was thinking about the hunting trips her father had taken her on as a child. She remembered the lessons in patience, observation, and precision that had seemed like simple fun at the time. She had made her way to the building's roof, carrying a high-powered camera with a telephoto lens. To any observer, she appeared to be documenting the invasion. In reality, she was providing reconnaissance data to the growing network of resistance fighters coordinating through ham radios, cell phones with battery power, and simple word of mouth. "Building 7 to all stations," she whispered into her radio. "I count 15 more craft approaching from the northeast. They should arrive in about 10 minutes. 3 blocks away, in a hardware store that had been abandoned when the power failed, plumber Tony Castellano was doing what humans had done for thousands of years when faced with superior force. He was improvising weapons, pipe bombs from plumbing supplies. Improvised spears from metal bars and kitchen knives. Fire bombs from cleaning supplies and gasoline drained from abandoned cars. His hands worked automatically while his mind calculated. Blast patterns and bottlenecks. He wasn't alone. Across the city, millions of humans were remembering skills they'd never thought they'd need. The suburban soccer mom was recalling her childhood on a farm, where she'd learned to shoot rats in the barn. The office manager was remembering his grandfather's stories about urban warfare in World War II. A college student was applying physics principles to create improvised explosives, but the aliens still didn't understand what they were facing. The humans appear to be in hiding, Officer Zillaneth reported to Commander Vexhall. Our ground forces are meeting no resistance. Excellent, Vexhall replied. Begin the occupation protocols. Establish control points at major intersections and government buildings. In Central Park, the alien patrol was moving deeper into the trees when the first human struck. Rick Barnes had been a sniper in Afghanistan. The alien soldier never saw him coming. The shot came from 400 meters away, a hunting rifle firing a bullet that found the gap in the alien's armor with surgical precision. The alien fell without a sound, before his companions could react. Carol. Santos triggered the first of many improvised explosive devices hidden throughout the park. The blast sent 3 more aliens sprawling, their sophisticated equipment no match for a simple pipe bomb filled with nails and ball bearings. Contact. The surviving alien squad leader barked into his communicator. We are under attack. But even as he spoke, he couldn't locate his attackers. The humans had vanished like ghosts, melting back into the urban landscape. They knew better than any alien invader ever could. This was the moment when the aliens began to understand their mistake. Across the city, similar scenes were playing out. In Brooklyn, a group of dock workers, led by crane operator Sam Rodriguez, had turned their industrial equipment into weapons of war. Shipping containers became impromptu fortresses. Forklifts became armored vehicles. The aliens found themselves fighting an enemy that could turn any environment into a battlefield. In Manhattan, retired police detective Helen Murphy was coordinating a network of spotters and communications operators from her apartment building. She had lived in the city for 60 years, knew every alley, every rooftop, every way to move unseen through the urban maze. Unit 7, this is base, she radioed. You have 3 hostiles moving up 5th Avenue toward your position. Recommend. Fall back to position Charlie and let them walk into the crossfire zone. Copy, base. Unit 7 moving to Charlie. The aliens had superior technology, but they were fighting on humanity's home ground. Every street corner was a potential ambush site. Every building was a fortress. Every human civilian was becoming a guerrilla fighter. In Denver, Jake Morrison was learning the same lesson that humans throughout history had discovered in times of crisis. Ordinary people were capable of extraordinary things when their families were threatened. He had connected with his neighbors, forming a loose defensive network throughout their subdivision. Mrs. Chun from down the street turned out to be a retired Air Force communications specialist. Bob Taylor from next door was a former police SWAT officer. The quiet accountant discovered he was surrounded by sleeping warriors. Jake, Lisa said, finding him in their garage where he was modifying their camping equipment into tactical gear. I've never seen you like this. He looked up from the hunting bow he was restringing, and she saw something in his eyes that was both frightening and reassuring. You know what the difference is between a sheep and a wolf? He asked quietly. What? A sheep thinks the wolf is the most dangerous thing in the forest, Jake said, testing the bow's pull strength. But the wolf knows better. The wolf knows that the most dangerous thing in any forest is a human being who's decided to stop being civilized. Above Earth's atmosphere, Commander Vexahall was receiving reports that made no sense. His technologically superior forces were being systematically hunted by creatures they had dismissed as harmless. The easy conquest was turning into a nightmare. "Commander," Zillaneth reported, her voice tight with concern, "we're losing contact with ground units across multiple sectors. The humans appear to be fighting back." "Impossible," Vexel snarled. "They're civilians. They have no military training, no weapons, no organization." "Sir?" came a voice from the communication station. "Perhaps we should consider that we've misjudged this species." Vexel's mouth parts clicked angrily. But deep in his mind, a cold fear was beginning to take root. The humans weren't behaving like prey animals. They were behaving like apex predators. And they were just getting started. All around the world, the same pattern was repeating. In London, Paris, Tokyo, and Sydney, humans were displaying the same shocking transformation. The species that had seemed so peaceful and harmless was revealing its true nature. They were the descendants of hunters who had tracked mammoths across frozen tundra. They were the children of warriors who had fought with stone tools against creatures with claws and fangs. They were the inheritors of survivors who had endured ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters that had wiped out countless other species. For thousands of years, humans had been the apex predators of Earth. They had just forgotten for a little while, because they had gotten so good at it that they could afford to be peaceful. But when something threatened their families, their homes, their way of life, they remembered very quickly who and what they really were. The aliens had woken up. 8 billion sleeping predators. And now they were going to learn why nothing else on Earth challenged humans anymore. By noon on the first day of the invasion, the alien empire had lost over 300 ground troops and 17 aircraft to an enemy they still barely understood. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were hunting in the ruins of what had been downtown Detroit. Former auto worker Miguel Santos was showing why humans had conquered every environment on their planet. He had spent 30 years building cars, understanding mechanical systems, solving problems with limited resources. Now he was applying those same skills to destroying alien technology. The alien patrol vehicle had been designed to handle any terrain, but its creators had never met someone who understood how to use industrial hydraulics as weapons. Miguel's improvised hydraulic ram, built from salvaged car parts, punched through the vehicle's armor like it was made of paper. "That's for my neighborhood," he muttered, watching alien soldiers flee from their disabled transport. But Miguel wasn't content to simply stop the vehicle. He was learning. Every alien weapon he captured, every piece of equipment he examined, taught him something new about his enemy's capabilities and weaknesses. Information that he passed along through the growing network of human resistance. 300 miles away in Chicago, kindergarten teacher Amy Chun was proving that the most dangerous humans weren't always the ones with military training. They were the ones who understood how to think systematically about complex problems. Amy had turned Lincoln Park Elementary School into a coordination center for the city's resistance movement. Her experience managing classroom logistics translated perfectly to managing supply lines, communications, and personnel deployment. The woman who had spent her mornings teaching children their alphabet was now teaching adults how to build improvised explosives. "Remember," she told a group of volunteers, her voice carrying the same patient authority she had used with 5-year-olds. "The alien sensors are calibrated for their own technology. They can't detect our communications if we use runners and written messages. We're going to coordinate this the same way humans coordinated before radio existed." The volunteers, mostly parents from her school district, nodded and dispersed to carry messages throughout the city. The aliens would intercept their electronic communications, but they would never think to monitor elementary school teachers passing handwritten notes. Meanwhile, in the skies above Earth, the aliens were learning another harsh lesson about human adaptability. Commercial pilot Lisa Patterson had been grounded when the aliens disabled most electronic systems, but she hadn't remained idle. Working with a team of mechanics at O'Hare Airport, she had converted a crop duster into something the aliens had never seen before, a primitive aircraft that their sensors barely registered. "This is Phoenix Leader," she radioed to her squadron of converted civilian aircraft. "Remember, these things are used to fighting advanced tech. They won't be expecting World War II tactics." Her squadron consisted of crop dusters, vintage warbirds from air shows, and ultralight aircraft, all armed with whatever weapons the pilots could attach to their planes. Against the aliens' energy weapons and advanced fighters, they should have been helpless. Instead, they were wreaking havoc. The aliens had programmed their defensive systems to handle missiles, energy weapons, and advanced military aircraft. They weren't programmed to deal with a 70-year-old crop duster dropping improvised napalm bombs made from farm chemicals and gasoline. "Tally-ho!" called out Bill Henderson, a retired Air Force colonel flying a restored P-51 Mustang. His plane's machine guns were loaded with ammunition crafted in basements and garages across America, but they were still deadly against alien aircraft that had never been designed to handle kinetic projectiles. The alien fighters twisted and turned, their energy weapons stabbing through the sky, but the human pilots were flying like their ancestors had in Earth's skies decades earlier, using tactics the aliens had no knowledge of, no defense against. On the ground, the transformation of humanity was accelerating. In Los Angeles, movie stuntman Carlos Gutierrez was using his knowledge of explosives and special effects to create booby traps that turned the city's famous landmarks into death traps for alien patrols. The Hollywood sign became a sniper's nest. The Santa Monica Pier became a killing ground laced with hidden explosives. In Miami, marine biologist Dr. Frank Rodriguez was applying his understanding of predator behavior to hunt alien reconnaissance drones. The skills he had learned studying shark attack patterns translated perfectly to understanding how the aliens moved, where they were vulnerable, how to approach them undetected. But perhaps the most terrifying development for the aliens was happening in small towns across America, where the humans were remembering skills that city dwellers had forgotten. In rural Montana, rancher Pete Wilson was demonstrating why apex predators always knew their territory better than any invader. He had spent 40 years tracking mountain lions and wolves through wilderness that would kill most humans in a matter of hours. To him, the alien soldiers moving through his land were just another type of predator, and he knew exactly how to deal with predators. "Sarah," he called to his wife, "radio the Johnson Ranch. Tell them we've got 3 more of those alien things moving through Sector 7. Have them set up the crossfire we talked about." Sarah Wilson, a former Army nurse, acknowledged and reached for their ham radio. Across the rural areas of America, farming communities were coordinating like they had during barn raisings and harvest time, except now they were harvesting alien invaders. The aliens had expected to face a centralized military response that they could defeat with superior technology. Instead, they found themselves fighting millions of individual humans who were adapting, improvising, and learning faster than any computer model had predicted possible. Back aboard his flagship, Commander Vex Hall was staring at casualty reports that defied all logic. "How?" he demanded. "How are primitives with inferior technology inflicting these losses on our forces?" Officer Zillineth had been studying the human response patterns, and she was beginning to understand something that terrified her. "Commander, I don't think they are primitives. I think they're something else entirely." "Explain?" "Look at their adaptation rate, sir. In less than 12 hours, they've gone from complete surprise to coordinated resistance. They're not following any military doctrine we've encountered. They're improvising solutions faster than our tactical computers can model." On the screen, they watched a group of humans in New York, using mirrors to blind alien sensors, while another group attacked from an unexpected angle. It was a tactic. that had never been recorded in alien military databases because no species they had encountered had ever thought to use such primitive methods effectively. "They're not fighting like a military force," Zillaneth continued. "They're fighting like a species that evolved by outthinking every predator on their planet. Every single one of them is thinking tactically, adapting constantly, sharing information at a rate that suggests." She paused, checking her readings again. "Suggests what?" Vexol demanded. "Commander, I think they're actually getting better at this as the fight continues. Each engagement makes them more effective, not less. They're learning from every encounter and teaching each other." Vexol felt a chill run through his exoskeleton. In all the Empire's conquests, they had never encountered a species that became more dangerous as the battle progressed. "Sir," came another voice from the communication station, "we're receiving reports that human resistance is spreading to areas we haven't even attacked yet. They appear to be preparing defenses in locations hundreds of miles from our landing sites." The commander realized with growing horror that the humans weren't just reacting to the invasion. They were anticipating his next moves, preparing for battles that hadn't even been planned yet. For the first time since the invasion began, Vexol understood that his empire might have made a catastrophic mistake. The humans weren't prey animals at all. They were the apex predators of their world, and they had just woken up. All across Earth, the pattern was the same. Humans were not just defending themselves. They were hunting their attackers with a skill and ferocity that the aliens had never encountered. Every human seemed to instinctively understand tactics, strategy, and survival in ways that took other species generations to learn. The accountant had become a strategist. The teacher had become a coordinator. The construction worker had become a saboteur. The grandmother had become a commander. And they were all working together with a unity and purpose that the aliens found impossible to understand or counter. The hunters had become the hunted. And the real fight was just beginning. 72 hours after the first alien ships had appeared in Earth's skies, Commander Vexol stood before his tactical display and contemplated the impossible. His superior invasion force was not just losing, it was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to mount any resistance at all. The display showed the current status of alien forces worldwide, and the picture was catastrophic. Red markers indicated lost units, and they covered the map like a spreading infection. Yellow markers showed units under attack, and there were far too many of those. Green markers, indicating secure alien positions, were vanishingly rare. "Report," he commanded, though he dreaded what he was about to hear. Officer Zillaneth's long arms moved sluggishly over her controls. She hadn't slept since the invasion began, and the stress was showing. "Commander, we have lost 68% of VOST. Our ground forces. 43% of our air support has been destroyed or disabled. The humans have. They've started capturing our technology and using it against us. Impossible. Their level of technological development—" "Sir," Zillaneth interrupted. Something she would never have done under normal circumstances. "They're reverse engineering our equipment in real time. In Detroit, they've converted one of our vehicles into some kind of mobile weapons platform. In Los Angeles, they're using our own energy weapons against our aircraft." Vexol's mouthparts clicked in agitation. He turned to the communication station. "What about the population centers? Surely the demonstrations of our power have convinced them to surrender?" Communications Officer Relfek's response was barely above a whisper. "Sir, the demonstrations appear to have had the opposite effect. Each show of force has resulted in increased human resistance. They're not afraid of us anymore. Commander, if anything, they seem to be getting angry." The truth was even worse than Relfek dared to report. Across Earth, humanity was experiencing something that the aliens could never have predicted. The sleeping giant hadn't just awakened. It had remembered what it was capable of. In New York, Rick Barnes was no longer just a former Marine sergeant. He was the commander of a resistance cell that included everyone from Wall Street executives to taxi drivers, all united by a simple understanding that their home was being threatened. "Listen up," he told his assembled fighters, a group that 3 days ago would have had nothing in common except their subway route. "Intelligence says the aliens are pulling back from 4 positions. That means they're either regrouping for a major assault, or they're starting to realize they're in over their heads." Margaret Foster, a retired librarian who had become his intelligence specialist, raised her hand. "Rick, I've been analyzing their retreat patterns. They're not regrouping. They're trying to establish defensive positions." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The alien invaders weren't preparing to attack anymore. They were preparing to defend themselves. "Well, I'll be damned," muttered Frank Chun, a plumber who had become an expert in improvised explosives. "They're scared of us." They were right to be scared, Doc. In Phoenix, Danny Rodriguez had transformed from construction worker to urban warfare specialist, leading a cone team that had cleared aliens from a 12-square-mile area of the city. But more importantly, he had become something that the aliens found incomprehensible. A human being who had accepted that violence was sometimes necessary and had become very, very good at it. "Maria," he called to his communications specialist, formerly a high school teacher, "patch me through to the Atlanta group. I want to coordinate our next push with their timeline." Across the country, Betty Williams had become the beating heart of the Southern resistance movement. The grandmother who had been watering her garden 3 days ago was now coordinating supply lines, medical treatment, and tactical operations across 3 states. "George," she said to her husband, "tell the Memphis group they can expect reinforcements. By Thursday, the Nashville volunteers are moving out tonight." George Williams, the retired police sergeant, shook his head in amazement. "Betty, you realize you're commanding more people than most generals?" "I'm not commanding anyone," she replied, checking casualty reports from the morning's operations. "I'm just helping neighbors talk to each other. That's what humans do, George. When one of us is threatened, we all respond." It was this response that the aliens couldn't understand, couldn't predict, and couldn't counter. They had expected to face a military organization with hierarchical command structures and predictable doctrines. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire species that was cooperating on a level they had never encountered before. In Jake Morrison's suburban neighborhood in Denver, the transformation was complete. The man who had been an accountant was now part of a defensive network that covered hundreds of square miles. More importantly, his children Emma and Tony were learning lessons about human nature that no school could have taught them. "Dad," Emma asked, watching him clean the hunting rifle that had become his constant companion, "were you always able to do these things?" Jake considered the question carefully. "Emma, every human being has the capacity to be whatever they need. To protect their family. Most of us never need to find out what that means. But when we do," he gestured toward the window, where their neighbors were visible maintaining defensive positions and communication equipment. "We remember that we're the species that survived ice ages, natural disasters, and every predator that ever lived on this planet. The aliens made the same mistake that every other threat to humanity has made. They thought that because we choose to be civilized, we had forgotten how to be dangerous." Lisa Morrison, who had spent the last 3 days discovering capabilities in herself she never knew existed, nodded in agreement. "The difference between us and them is that they had to build machines to make them dangerous. We were born dangerous. We just prefer not to be." Aboard the alien flagship, Commander Vic Sahal was finally beginning to understand what his empire had stumbled into. "Zillineth," he said quietly, "show me the footage from the Denver suburbs again." The screen displayed the human residential area that had seemed so peaceful just days before. Now it was revealed as something else entirely. A network of fortified positions, coordinated defensive lines, and tactical installations that had been constructed by people with no formal military training, using materials that had been sitting in their garages and basements. "Commander," Zillineth said softly, "I've been reviewing our intelligence on human evolution. They didn't evolve as prey animals. They evolved as persistence hunters. They're designed to never give up, to adapt to any threat, to cooperate on a scale that allows them to bring down prey much larger and more powerful than themselves." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that we're not fighting civilians, sir. We're fighting a species of apex predators who had simply chosen to rest, and we just interrupted their nap." The communication board lit up with incoming signals from alien commanders around the globe, all reporting the same thing: organized human resistance that was growing stronger by the hour, casualty rates that were becoming unsustainable, and technology losses that were unacceptable. "Commander," came a voice from the communication station, "we're receiving a transmission from the human government." "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was calm, professional, and utterly terrifying in its reasonableness. "This is President Harrison of the United States of America, speaking on behalf of the human species. Your invasion of our world has failed. Your forces are surrounded, outnumbered, and outmatched by a population that you clearly did not understand. We are prepared to offer you one opportunity to withdraw from our planet with minimal additional losses." Vexhal's mouthparts clicked nervously. "What are their terms?" "Complete withdrawal of all alien forces within 72 hours. Any technology left behind will be considered salvage. Any alien personnel who wish to surrender will be treated according to the Geneva Convention, which you should probably look up." The president paused, and when he continued, there was something in his voice that made Vexhal's exoskeleton feel suddenly fragile. "Commander, you seem to have misunderstood something fundamental about our species. You saw humans at rest and assumed we were weak. You saw our civilization and assumed we were soft. You saw our peaceful daily lives and assumed we were defenseless. This was a mistake." Another pause. "We are the species that turned wolves into pets. We are the species that learned to fly by watching birds and then built machines that could travel to other worlds. We are the species that looked at every hostile environment on our planet and decided to live there anyway. We didn't become the dominant species on Earth by being weak, Commander. We became dominant by being so universally dangerous that everything else learned to stay out of our way. The thing about apex predators, Commander, is that we don't hunt because we're angry. We hunt because we're good at it. And you just taught 8 billion apex predators that you're prey." The transmission ended, leaving the alien bridge in absolute silence. Finally, Vexhal spoke. "Officer Zillineth, prepare the fleet for withdrawal." "Sir?" "We have made," Vexhal said slowly, "the greatest tactical error in the history of the Empire. We attacked a species of sleeping predators and woke them up. If we remain here, the